Recording in progress.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Christian. I'm the communications lead for Friends of the Lake District, and I'm here today. We're going to be discussing gifting wills. Just a bit of housekeeping before we carry on. First of all, you can see us, but we can't see you. So if you have any questions throughout the webinar, there is a way you can do that. If you have a look on your screen, you'll see a little Q&A box. It should normally be at the bottom. Sometimes it's at the top. You can press that and type a question in. And at the end, we'll take the opportunity to answer any questions that come up. Apart from that, I hope you enjoy this session. It should be really interesting. I know we've got a couple of interesting people for you to hear from, and that will start with Anne-Marie Rooney, who is going to speak to you now. Handing over to you, Anne-Marie.
Thanks there, Christian. Hi there and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Anne-Marie Rooney. I'm the Fundraising and Membership Officer here at Friends of the Lake District. Part of my role at the charity includes processing generous gifts and wills that we've been left. I'm also joined here today by solicitor Emma Kelly from Thompson Hayton Winkley. So, today's webinar is on gifts and wills. So the webinar is going to introduce what a gift in a will is and how you leave one to charity, useful terminologies that relate to wills, legal information surrounding wills, kindly led by Emma, which includes different types of wills, inheritance tax, and giving to charity, and also the benefit of leaving a gift in your will to Friends of the Lake District. There'll also be time for questions at the end of the presentation. So the importance of having a will. Did you know 6 out of 10 people don't have an up-to-date will? Now, writing a will can seem daunting, but it doesn't have to be. Making a will ensures that your estate goes to those closest to you and causes that are important to you. A will is a legal document that ensures your wishes are recorded as you intended and actioned after death. It's recommended that you review and, where needed, update your will every 5 years or after a significant life change. For example, a house purchase, marriage, divorce, or the death of somebody close to you. Now, what's a gift in a will? So these are sometimes known as a legacy. A gift in a will, no matter the size, is a donation that costs you nothing today, but has a lasting impact beyond our lifetimes. Beneficiaries, those who receive a gift, may include family members, friends, charities, or institutions, for example, schools or churches. The gift might be financial, a set amount or a percentage of your estate, land, property, or a specific item, whether it be a piece of jewellery or a painting. So how to leave a gift in your will to charity? If you do wish to leave a gift in your will to charity, all you need is the charity's full name, full address, and registered charity number. It's really that simple. If you do wish to leave a gift to a charity in your will, but you're not sure which charity, do your research. What change do you want your money to make, and which charity can achieve this for you? Does the charity's values align with your own? Can they showcase how your money will be spent and provide examples of positive impact? Solicitors can also provide suggestions of charities based on what you're looking to support. So, useful terminology. When writing a will, you may come across some words that you aren't familiar with. Here are just a few terminologies for you. So, a will, it's a legal document outlining the final wishes of a person to be actioned upon death. Types of gifts, so you've got pecuniary and residuary, and these are very much legal terms. Pecuniary is when you leave a specific amount of money. Residuary is when you leave a percentage of your estate. And one of the benefits of a residuary gift is that it maintains its percentage value over time. You can also leave a specific item or a piece of land or property. A codicil. This is an addition to a will that provides further details, whether to amend or revoke part of a will, and can be an option rather than having to write a brand new will. Probate is the legal process to prove the validity of a will. A beneficiary, as we mentioned before, is an individual or organisation named in a will who is a recipient of a gift. And an executor is someone who actions the instructions of a person's will. Other terms you may come across: a legator, a person who leaves money or property to another person, charity or organisation after death. A testator, a person who has made a will to be actioned after death. And an intestator, a person who has died without leaving a will. Now, at Friends of the Lake District, we do not offer legal advice or support writing a will, and we cannot be involved in any aspect of it. We recommend that you consult legal advice. Emma Kelly from Thompson Hayton Winkley is going to discuss the legal aspects of will and leaving a gift. So over to you, Emma.
Thank you very much, Anne-Marie, and welcome to everybody today. Thank you very much for having me. I thought I would start off, if we don't mind going to the first slide, please, Anne-Marie, with introducing myself. So my name's Emma. I'm currently a solicitor with Thompson Hayton Winkley. I've been a qualified solicitor since 2023 and initially started my journey into law by attending the University of Liverpool before going on to obtain my legal practitioner's course in Manchester. I then decided it was time to come back to where I was from and did my training here in Carnforth before settling down as a solicitor in the Lake District. I currently work as a private client solicitor, advising people on wills, probate, tax planning, and lasting powers of attorney. So hopefully I'll be able to answer some questions that you have today, or perhaps even reassure you on the importance of having a will. If we could please go to the next slide. So I'm going to look at the key elements today on planning for your future, specifically the importance of leaving a will and setting up charitable legacies. The things that we'll cover include why everyone should have a will and how to make it effective, what happens if you don't have a will, looking briefly at the intestacy rules, some basics around inheritance tax and how to plan more effectively, and then finally on how leaving a charitable legacy within your will can make a real difference. Hopefully by the end of today's session, you'll feel more confident about how to protect your loved ones and perhaps inspired to leave a charitable legacy for a cause that you care about. If you could please go to the next slide. So when people come to see me, they often have absolutely no idea how they want their will to look. It's quite a daunting process. They don't know how they want to set it up, what they want to leave behind. And so here's how I approach it. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of process. The right option depends on your family setup, the assets that you have, and your personal wishes. There are several options available for everyone, but let's run through a couple of them so you have an idea of what they are. So the most common type of will is a simple will. This is ideal for couples or individuals that don't have a large estate to leave behind, and they usually just want to get something in place to make sure that their assets pass who they want them to, and so the loved ones are looked after. This is also the most easy will to update as life moves on. Perhaps you set one up when the children are little, and then obviously they go to university, move forward, and you realise that you don't need guardians anymore. Perhaps you need to be preparing for your grandchildren. The next type of will is a mirror will. So this is usually set up by a couple, and as the name suggests, they mirror one another. They usually are set out on the same terms, and they have the same end beneficiaries. Where people can get a little bit confused is mirror wills aren't legally binding on one another. So whilst couples can set them up at the same time, they have the same wishes, either party is always free to change their wishes at any point in time. This can often get confused with what is known as mutual wills, and this is similar but a lot more restrictive on both parties. Both individuals can set up this will together, and it forms a legally binding agreement between them to honour these wishes. Now, whilst that sounds like a really good idea, they have fallen out of favour in the last couple of years because of how restrictive they are on both parties. Once you've made that agreement, if one of you loses capacity, you can no longer change that, no matter how your family circumstances change or your monetary assets change. Now, the next type of will or trust that we'd look at would be a nil rate band discretionary trust. This is slightly more advanced and is usually only set up by people who have substantial assets, but it is a way which you can ring fence your assets, usually for children, or perhaps you are thinking about doing a bit of inheritance tax planning, and it allows you to transfer what's known as your nil rate band allowance, which I'll come to later on, into this trust, and perhaps provide for a spouse during their lifetime, but protect that pot for children or family members, or perhaps even a charity at the end of the spouse's lifetime. Another type of will which throws people off is a living will, or what's sometimes known as an advance decision. This isn't actually a will. It's a completely different type of document. It doesn't touch money at all or assets. In fact, it's almost a medical decision. It's a way for a person to set out their wishes regarding life-sustaining treatment, or perhaps particularly aversion to medical care. And it's a legally binding document which is presented to family and doctors to say, I do not want to proceed with this treatment. I would always recommend setting up a lasting power of attorney if you have those particularly strong views, but this is another option that people can explore. And then finally, as Anne-Marie explained, there is an option of a codicil. So this is great if you just want to make a small amendment to your will. Perhaps you want to increase a legacy, or you want to change your executors because they've moved to Australia, so you need someone closer to home. Codicils are a brilliant way to not completely change the whole will in its entirety and make those small changes. But I would always urge people that if we're deciding that we are completely removing family members and want to make significant changes, please just come and see us to make a new will to avoid confusion down the line, as we don't want to be pulling 4 or 5 wills out of the cupboard when the time comes, because that can be quite hard for family. So if we could just go to the next slide, please. So what do you need to think about? You've never made a will before. Where do we start? Well, I like to think, who do we trust to look after our affairs when we've passed away? Who do we want to put on the executor's hat and to look after the family and the finances? That's where we start. Speaking of family, do we have young children? Do we need to be thinking about setting up guardians for them? Is there somebody that we would trust if both parents are no longer able to look after those children? What about specific cash gifts? Do we have a family member that's buying their first home that you want to leave a substantial sum to? Or perhaps we have a family heirloom that has been passed down for generation to generation, and we want to make sure that it continues to do so. Let's include that within the will. Do you have a substantial estate with lots of assets that you do need to start thinking about inheritance tax planning? A lot of people don't realise that the earlier they start to do this, the better it is in the long run. You don't really want to start thinking about your inheritance tax planning if you're 92 years old, but you would be surprised that that's usually when people do start to think about it. Finally, what about your funeral wishes? Now, these don't have to go within your will, but a lot of family do come to us and ask, did mum or dad tell you anything? Did Auntie Jane say she really wanted to be cremated or to be buried? It's a way to reassure family that they are doing right by you and carrying out your wishes. And then, speaking of family, do we actually want to leave things to family? Are they our end beneficiaries, or perhaps there's a charity that we wanted to include, or perhaps we just want to leave everything to the cat's protection? Think about who you actually want to inherit your estate when you've passed away. If we could go to the next slide, please. So I've talked a lot about what to think about if you want to set up a will, but what about if you don't want to set up a will, or perhaps you don't actually get around to doing it? If you don't have a will in place, then your estate will pass by what's known as the intestacy rules. In essence, this is a government checklist, and the estate is distributed in order of priority of this checklist. Your estate doesn't often get divided fairly because you might not have wanted the people in that checklist to be the ones who inherit, but unfortunately, unless you make specific provision, that's the way that it will go. For example, if you are married and you don't have children, the spouse inherits everything in its entirety. However, if you are married and you do have children, the spouse first inherits 270,000, and then they get a half of the residue. So everything after that £270,000 of your estate is split down the middle. The spouse gets 50%, and the other 50% is given immediately to the children. Now, that might not work in practice for people whose main asset is the family home, which is why a lot of people think, oh, it'll be fine, it'll pass to my spouse, and then they get to that situation and realise a hard decision needs to be made. Another thing that people are often caught out on is, in today's day and age, not everybody's getting married or forming a civil partnership, and they don't realise that that cohabitee, your lifelong partner, has no automatic right to inherit anything from your estate. If you don't own it jointly and you haven't made a will, it will instead pass to other members of your family rather than that person who you've built your life with. So that's something to always bear in mind. It's always worth having a will to stay in control of your money, your property, and your possessions, but it also avoids family disputes and arguments, and it makes life much easier for people that you've left behind because they know that they are honouring your wishes. If you could please go to the next slide. So when people think about making a will, they picture dividing up their money and passing along the family home. But you can actually do so much more than that within your will. If you choose to leave a gift to charity, you are continuing to honour those wishes and values that you had throughout your life. The amount of gifts that go to charity within wills, I believe, now I'd have to double check, it amounts to about 2 million per year. But again, I'll double check that one. But most people think, oh, I'll leave a little bit to charity. I'll do that definitely. But did you realise that actually of the 35% people who say they will leave a gift to charity, actually only 7% do? So every single person who does choose to do that is making a great difference to all these charities. And as well as the personal impact that you can make, from a practical point of view, there's great tax advantages too. Every gift that you leave to UK registered charity is completely exempt from inheritance tax. So if you are worried about leaving behind a big tax bill for your family, perhaps you want to start gifting now, or perhaps you even want to take advantage of something known as the 10% rule. And if you leave 10% of your estate to charity, and you do have to pay inheritance tax, the rest of it will actually be taxed at 36% rather than the standard 40%. So again, if it is something that you are worried about, it's definitely worth considering. And I'll go through that a little bit more detail on my next slide. So if we could just go there, please. So what is this 10% rule that I've just talked about? When you leave a gift to a UK registered charity, that portion of your estate is completely exempt from inheritance tax. It's deducted before the tax is calculated, bringing your estate down. But there's also an extra incentive built into the tax system called the 10% rule. If 10% or more of your net estate which is the amount that's left after the exemptions and allowances such as nil rate band have been deducted, go to charity, then the rest of the estate is reduced from 40% to 36%. So not only do the charity receive a meaningful gift, but your family and other beneficiaries actually receive more too, because overall you're reducing that inheritance tax bill, meaning there's more assets available for them. This was something that was introduced relatively recently in 2012, and it's a way to encourage more people to leave something behind for charity. Because as I said, whilst 35% of people say that they'd like to leave a gift, only 7% do. Even a modest percentage to charity can make a huge difference. So really, in short, it's one of those rare win-win situations. The charity gets support and the family pays less tax. So I understand that that was probably a lot of information. So let's just run through an example of how that would work in practice. If we could please go to the next slide. So we have a gentleman called Robert. He dies, leaving behind an estate of $750,000 upon the date of his death. Within his will, he's been very generous and he's chosen to leave a gift of £50,000 to Marie Curie. So how do we get this 36% reduction? So the first thing that we would do is we deduct the gift to charity. So we deduct the $50,000 from the value of his estate. This is before any other reliefs and exemptions are applied. And this will leave the value at $700,000. So now we need to move on to the other exemptions. So we deduct the nil rate band allowance, which is the tax-free allowance that each individual is allowed to pass free from inheritance tax. And currently that is set at $325,000 per person. And this leaves a figure of $375,000. So that's the value of the estate that we're at now. So now we need to work out what 10% of the estate is. What is the gift that we need to leave in order to benefit from the 36% reduction? So we add the 50,000 back in to see what kind of estate we are working with, bringing the value up to 425,000. And then simply we just work out the 10%, so 42,500. Because that gift of 50,000 is more than the 10%, the estate has qualified for the 10% rule, so it benefits from the 36% reduction. So if Robert hadn't left 10% of his estate to charity, the remainder of his estate would be taxed at 40% and he'd be paying an inheritance tax bill of 150,000. By making that generous gift, the rest of his estate benefits from the reduction, and instead he's only paying £135,000 of inheritance tax, meaning that his family has actually saved £15,000 of inheritance tax, which I don't know about you, but I think that's quite a good saving. And then finally, if we could just move to the next slide, inheritance tax. So just to recap, everybody benefits from what's called the nil rate band allowance. This is the amount that you can pass free from inheritance tax upon your death, and at the moment it's set at $325,000 per person. Anything above that threshold is normally taxed at 40% unless it qualifies for a further exemption or relief. There's a great benefit to being married or being in a civil partnership. Everything that you pass between spouses upon the death of the first is exempt from inheritance tax. And this often means that you can benefit from what's called the transferable nil rate band allowance, and the surviving spouse's estate inherits the first spouse's allowance, meaning they can actually pass up to £650,000 free from inheritance tax, which is a great saving. There's also specific assets such as that benefit from other reliefs, such as business property relief and agricultural relief. These can reduce or completely remove even more tax on qualifying land or business interests. I'm not going to go into detail on those today, as they depend heavily on the individual's estate and the circumstances. And obviously we have ongoing changes within the legislation at the moment, so we're just going to wait till all of that's finalised and then get into those in the future. And then finally, something that people don't realise is that any gift that you make and survive 7 years of can actually pass free from inheritance tax. So this is known as the 7-year gifting rule. If you make a genuine gift within your lifetime to a child or a grandchild, for example, and you live 7 years from that gift, it falls completely outside of your estate for tax purposes. If you pass away within that 7 years, it does get recaptured back into your estate, but there is a sliding scale called the tapering relief, which means it can actually reduce how much you would have to pay on that gift. So the younger you are that you start making gifts, the more likely it is that you will be able to reduce the inheritance tax bill that you pay in the future. And then if we could just please just go to the last slide. So just to summarise, things that I would hope that you would take away from today is plan ahead, make a will, keep it up to date as life changes, and really think about making that gift to charity. If not only to keep giving as you do on a day-to-day basis and continue to let your beliefs and values live on, to benefit from that inheritance tax reduction, because you may as well take advantage of it. I hope that has been a good and comprehensive overview, but if anybody wants to get in touch for further advice, please just see my details below. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma, for that information. We really appreciate your time and your expertise surrounding this topic. So, leaving a gift in your will to Friends of the Lake District. So, the decision to leave a gift in your will to Friends of the Lake District is a personal one. It should be yours and yours only, with no pressure from the charity. We're extremely grateful to all those who consider leaving us a gift in their will. A gift, no matter the size, will make a difference to this unique and spectacular Lake District and Cumbrian landscapes by helping us to protect and enhance it for future generations. With these generous gifts, we're able to achieve our vision of thriving Cumbrian landscapes for nature, for people, forever. Where possible, we ask that any gifts left to us are allocated for general purposes rather than restricted to specific activities, as priorities for the charity, along with our projects, may change over time. Leaving a percentage of your estate rather than a set amount represents a greater value, as a fixed sum can lose value due to inflation. We use all funds from gifts and wills appropriately, so it has the greatest impact on our diverse and important landscapes, all whilst honouring the final wishes of our donors. We understand how personal a will is, and you're not obliged to share the contents of your will with anyone, including beneficiaries. If you intend on leaving a gift in your will to Friends of the Lake District and are happy to share these intentions with us, we would love to have the opportunity to thank you personally for your kindness. It also gives us a chance to discuss how you wish your funds to be used to make a positive impact on our landscapes. With that, we also understand that priorities and circumstances can change along with wills. Those closest to you will always benefit and come first. If you do inform us that you intend on leaving us a gift in your will, we understand this isn't legally binding and isn't guaranteed. So the impact, where your money will be spent. Did you know gifts and wills make up 50% of our income, of which 84% of that comes from our members. Leaving even 1% of your estate to Friends of the Lake District has a 100% impact on the Cumbrian landscape. Gifts and wills are a vital source of revenue for us and fund our core charitable activities. They enable us to carry out vital conservation work on our fells, and we lead by example in demonstrating sustainability and conservation on our own land. Inspire and mobilise people to work in partnership with us to protect and enhance these landscapes. And we comment on planning applications that have a significant impact on the landscapes of the Lake District and campaign on issues of importance to Cumbria. With money from gifts and wills, we've been able to create more native woodlands in Cumbria, and we're actually going to be back out on our land again soon, planting saplings at the Helm and Rusland. We've been able to deliver volunteering and educational events which inspire hundreds of people each year to look after this fragile landscape. So we run regular sessions on dry stone walling and hedge laying. We host an annual competition for hedge laying, as well as conservation events such as Fix the Fells. So please do come along, help, get involved, or watch these events. We've also been able to fight off inappropriate developments, such as the proposal for Zipwise in Gledriding and Thirlmere, and the Holiday Lodge Resort at Roan Head. It has been a long and important fight at Elterwater. Although it wasn't the outcome we hoped for, it brought about awareness for the damage this type of development can have on the landscape. We don't always win our battles, but we learn from them. Gifts and Wills has also made us able to launch activities to ensure the protection and recognition of our nocturnal skies through the Dark Skies Reserve accreditation, and educate and support our local communities. Our engagement team has been out into schools to deliver Go Wild Under the Stars sessions, teaching children about moths, dark skies, and the impact of light pollution. We've been able to educate our future custodians of this beautiful landscape. We'll be happy to discuss with you how you wish your money to be used and how it can make a positive impact on the Lake District landscapes. So we've come to the end of the presentation, and now we have some time for questions.
Thanks very much, both. That was really, really interesting. And I do have a question here. Well, it's a statement, first of all, from Ian. And he's saying that they moved from England to Scotland, and therefore they needed a new will. Is that something? I'm guessing Emma's still here with us. Is that true? So if you move to Scotland, is the law different up there?
Yes. So I think a lot of people forget that we are actually separate countries within the United Kingdom. So here at the moment, we're governed by the law of England and Wales. But if you move to Scotland and you own property and things in Scotland or have assets there, I would definitely recommend setting up a new will, because I believe that they have kind of rules around like forced heirship or something. I'm not a Scottish lawyer, so I can't confirm, but definitely worth speaking to a solicitor there just to see what they recommend.
Brilliant. Thanks, Emma. And then another question. You often see in places like WH Smith's and things like that, kind of, a free will pack and things like that. Is that, I mean, do they hold water? Is it always better to go through a solicitor to get your will sorted?
They're perfectly valid if you do them correctly. So that's where a lot of people get tripped up. And they do them themselves, they send them off, they get sent to the probate registry, and all of a sudden the family's got a big mess to untangle at the end. Or perhaps they have thought they have done them properly to affect that tax planning, and really it's not been what they actually would have wanted. So whilst they are valid, there's always a benefit of coming to see somebody such as an expert like myself to make sure that, one, it's done correctly and save yourself a lot of money in the future to get it rectified, and two, making sure that you are setting up your will so it is the most tax effective way of doing it.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much. That was really fascinating. Anne-Marie, have you got any more questions?
No, I don't believe so.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much both. Anne-Marie, if you've got anything else to add.
Yeah, so we've come to the end of today's webinar. Thank you again to Emma Kelly from Thompson Hayton Winkley for joining us today and providing some really useful legal information regarding gifts and wills. And also thank you to Christian for supporting the technical side of today's presentation. On the screen are my contact details, which are also available on our website, should you have any questions surrounding gifts and wills and leaving a gift to Friends of the Lake District. Also on the screen are Emma's contact details as well, should you wish to get in touch with some legal advice. This presentation and recording will go up on YouTube as well, so you can refer back to this at a later date as well. So supporting us, there are different ways you can get involved with Friends of the Lake District. It's not just all about gifts and wills. You can join us as a member for as little as £33 a year. Volunteer your time with us, so we have some hedge planting sessions coming up. Or you can start your Christmas shopping now and purchase our new 2026 calendar or landscape gifts. So once again, thank you to Emma and Christian for their support today, and thank you to you all for attending today's webinar.